Good afternoon, 6-4 Owl parents. Mr. Hagedorn here with our weekly update. One quick announcement before I get into math. We have started to put grades in. Make sure you're looking at Power School grades. Canvas grades may be inaccurate. Most of the time, they're going to be pretty good, but sometimes they may be inaccurate. Power Schools is where you want to check those grades. Make sure the Power School grade is what you're looking at. All right, in Math 6 next week, we started our first study guide today on ratios and finding equivalent ratios and simplifying ratios. Students are going to have Monday to finish up that study guide. Please, Monday night, check that your student has submitted it in Canvas. That's how they'll get their grade. On Tuesday, they will have their Unit 2 quiz number 1. We'll then continue with our Unit 2 and start looking at unit rates and how we can use those to solve problems. All right, in Math 6 Plus, we took our first quiz yesterday. We will continue to talk about equivalent ratios, finding unit rates, and using those to solve problems, just like in Math 6. We're going to have our second study guide, our Unit 2 study guide number 2 on Wednesday. We'll have our second quiz of the year on Thursday. And then we're going to move on to Unit 3, which is going to continue with some ratio stuff. Also, spiral number 1 was due today. If your child did not turn in the paper for that, please make sure they do so next week. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
All right, all families, I'm going to put two different hats on. My first is the ELA hat. This week, we kind of got through Percy Jackson chapters 1 through 4, and we ended the week with a mid-unit assessment that summarized their ability to do gist and finding evidence, and then using evidence to figure out Percy's strengths and weaknesses, which is also like his character traits, and using evidence to prove your thoughts true. Next week, we're going to take a different dive into, now we're going to go into looking at a nonfiction text called The Hero's Journey, and it talks about these stages that a hero will go through, and we're going to start to relate those to Percy a little bit. And then we're going to look at using main idea versus gist. There's a little bit of difference there. The gist is a short and sweet, and the main idea is a little bit more in depth and a little bit more detailed. And then we're going to take The Hero's Journey, which is a nonfiction text, and we're going to start comparing it with the Percy Jackson book. So we're going to use two different texts, and we're going to start to grab text evidence from both and put an analysis with that. And then we're going to put all those things together, and we're going to start teaching kids next week how to write one good paragraph. Believe me, I believe this is going to be a pretty heavy lift. So with help from home, hopefully, we need to understand that we're going to write a topic sentence. We're going to have a supporting detail. We're going to have evidence of that detail, and we're going to have analysis of that detail, but that's not even it. That's half the paragraph. Then we're going to have supporting detail number 2, text evidence number 2, and analysis number 2. So you can see it's going to be a heavy lift next week in ELA. We're going to end next week in ELA with a fast bridge assessment, which is a quick check-in with all the students to see where they're at in their ELA skills. So that'll be happening on Friday. That hat's off. Science hat is on. We ended this week with a bubble lab that kind of went through the scientific method. And this is ending our quick little unit on thinking like a scientist. And today we did Bubble Lab Day 2, which is analysis of the lab. And I told you this before, that kids love to do the lab. They hate to do the questions. Well, I realized that in real time this week. Kids have to understand that it's going to take some work, and you have to put some thought into it. So please reiterate at home that try the work. Don't give up. Just try, and we'll get there if they try. You can't get anywhere if you don't try. So next week, we're going to start off with ending the bubble lab that we started today. We're going to finish it off on Monday. We're going to take a quick Google check-in on the flip notes we did on the scientific method. And then we're moving into our first major unit of the year, which is Matter. Matter is like a 6 to 7 week long unit. It's our longest unit of the year. It's almost tied with Waves, so I guess it's a tie for the longest unit. And we start with matter, atoms, elements, molecules, compounds, and a man named John Dalton. That's what we're going to be focused on next week. All things matter. Have a great weekend.
All things matter. All right, friends, let's talk social studies for just a quick moment. So in social studies, we are continuing to talk about thinking like a historian, and we've been looking at This week, we've been talking a little bit about timelines and history. We've done a little bit of primary and secondary source and bias and how people look at things slightly differently depending on who they are. We have a timeline project that was due today. Some students have already turned that in, and I've given some grades. Some students were turning it in today, so you might want to check in with your student and see how they did on that, or if they've turned that and finished that assignment. Now, as we continue into next week, we're going to finish off our unit on thinking like a historian with some map skills. We're going to talk about tall dogs, which is what all really good maps have, like a title, an author, a legend, a date, an orientation, a grid, and a scale. We're going to be looking at these kind of weird historic documents, these paper maps that we don't really use anymore, but it's a great way to kind of look at a map and understand what the elements of the map are so we can understand how to read a map. We're then going to talk about the 5 themes of geography, and as we finish the 5 themes of geography, then we're going to move into our big unit on geography, which is really looking at the world and thinking about 2 questions, which we started to think about today. Why would a human, especially early humans, because that's our history, why would early humans choose to live here or choose not to live here? So we're going to be talking a lot about what the world looks like and why a human would choose to live there, or why a group of people would choose to move through that space and move to a different space. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. Thank you very much for everything you've done this week. If you have any questions, let us know.